everyone, and welcome to today's Cathedra webinar, live on September 18th, 2025. If it's your first time attending one of our webinars, Cathedra means learning in Creek, and today you'll be learning about how to tell your smart story in grant applications. And that's going to be with the amazing Diane Leonard. My name is Brianna Burge. I am the Training and Development Coordinator here at the Native Learning Center. And we're so happy that you all could join us today. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that can be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. And before we get started, I just want to familiarize you all with the learning platform and where things can be found. I have put a link to today's PDF slides in our public chat so that everyone can view them. They're also in the shared notes. You can also access a copy of the slides for today, as well as access today's webinar recording in the future by going to the courses section here on our platform. And any resource items for download are also available within the online course when you go through the course pages. And each time that you want to join one of our webinars going forward, you're just going to go ahead and log into the website, and then you're going to click on the large green banner that's going to be on the top of your screen, like showed in this picture here. And when you first join the webinar, just remember that it's going to ask you to complete an audio test before you actually join. We do ask that you select the listen only options so that we can kind of avoid any feedback when we're inside of the webinar. And if you need to change the speaker that your sound is playing from, you can select the phone icon down at the bottom of your screen. This is going to bring up a list of your speaker and mic devices so that you can choose your preferred audio output. And of course, we are so happy that you're here. We do encourage you to participate in today's webinar, and we're going to primarily rely on the public chat to do so. So in the left gray menu panel, you can see the public chat as well as the shared notes. If you click on the public chat, you're going to see a chat open between all webinar attendees, the NLC facilitator, as well as your webinar instructor. Just go ahead and click on the box that says send message to public chat, type the message that you're liking to send, and then it's going to hit enter and click the blue paper airplane icon to send your message in. You can also send any comments or any questions that you have into the chat. Also, feel free to use the raise hand feature at the bottom right corner of the screen if you think that we've missed something along the way. Any tech support issues can also be submitted here as well, and I will do my best to support you and help you navigate through it. And if you click on the shared notes section, you'll also find some helpful links like a link for today's webinar feedback survey, which we do highly encourage you to complete, just to let us know how we're doing. You'll also find a link to the location of our Cathedra webinars archive on our YouTube channel, a link to connect with us on LinkedIn, and a link to bookmark for easy login to Cathedra Constant Learning in the future. And of course, we would love to really get to know you all and would be honored if you would let us know your name, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation if you have one. You may also be a tribal employee and your work or role in Indian country that may have led you to today's webinar. And just a friendly reminder that while you're doing so and while we're all connecting with each other, try not to click on the red menu panel that's going to be on the left-hand side of your screen, because if you do click the red menu panel, it is going to take you out of the live webinar, but that's okay. All you have to do is just go ahead and click the green banner again, and that's going to let you back into the webinar. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Diane. Diane, we are so excited and we're so happy to learn from you today.
It is so good to be here with everyone. I hope that you're having a wonderful day, regardless of where you're based, whether it's sunny outside or not, and what time of day it is. I'm into Snacko 30 is where I am in my day here in the Eastern time zone, but you might be, perhaps you're still in Coffee 030. I've moved on to Seltzer. No more caffeine for Diane today. But we are going to talk about smart storytelling. And I recognize some of your names, and hello, it's so good to see you again. I love to talk about all things grants, but I don't think I know all of you. I don't think we had a chance to interact with everyone. So a quick introduction. I'm Diane, and I love all things grants. I was first a grant maker. I was the program officer at the Michigan Women's Foundation, so managing all of our grants for women and girls programming around the state of Michigan. But I've been on the grant seeking side exclusively for more than 20 years, no short period of time. And really the reason I love helping folks apply for grants is because it's really hard. I mean, it's hard for grant makers. There's always more good proposals than there are dollars available, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to find funding, to do the application work, to get it submitted, all while you're still probably doing other job tasks, other responsibilities and duties in support of your communities. So I love doing anything I can to help increase your confidence, decrease your stress as it relates to grants. That's the whole mission for my team and I at DH100 Consulting. And the thing that helps fuel my work, I've already made one coffee joke, one good cup of coffee a day. Big. I'm not talking about how big, yeah, it's fine. It's right. I can talk about a lot of ounces, like 20 ounces, but that still counts. It's in one mug, but then that's it. And some form of movement. Today, it felt like it was a better day, not to run, go a little slower, walk the mini golden doodle. But those two things happened, checked the box. So I'm fueled and ready to talk about grants. What I would love from you, if you're willing in the public chat, to let me know what is fueling your grant-related work today, or maybe your grant-related learning today, if this is the only grant item on your task list today. But if you're willing to share what's fueling your work, it could be food, it could be drinks, it could be out of work activities, it could be something about your work. No right or wrong answer, but if you're willing to share, I would love to hear. In our 90 minutes together today, time is gonna, I think, fly by when we talk about SMART objectives. SMART is an acronym. Yes, we'll get to defining it really early on here. I want to call out, in addition to those slides, I've got a PDF handout, a guide about SMART objectives that's already part of your materials for this course. So that's available for you to get whenever you're ready. And also, I think I'm going to end up using a few links to get you to some blog posts that our team has written, but I didn't put the hyperlinks in on the slides, and I thought I better have those at the ready. So there might be a few more things that are going to come into that public chat. That's why I wanted to make sure you're comfortable getting there, and having you tell me what's fueling your work is one way that you can do that. Also, I want to highlight, in case you haven't been in a webinar with me before, I do at the end always ask if you have any outstanding questions about today's topic, or frankly, anything grant related is welcome. But if you came to today's session and you've got a specific question about SMART objectives that you want to make sure gets answered, don't wait. Feel free to type it into that chat box right now. Or if a question comes up while I'm in a particular slide talking about a particular topic, put it in the chat in that moment. Please don't feel like you have to hold your questions in a parking lot until the end. I'm happy to take them right away. So when we think about what we're most excited for in this upcoming month, I was looking at where folks were based, and I wanted to highlight that we are in what I like to call, and others do as well, nonprofit conference season. It's back to school for K through 12. It's back to school for higher education. Honestly, it is back to school learning time for nonprofit professionals as well. So our team is super excited to be at some upcoming events, some virtual, some in person. In fact, we've got a really great one-day, full-day training coming up in October through the Native Learning Center, talking about pre-planning, because there's been a lot of forecasts that are just for tribal organizations. So I wanted to flag that. If you haven't seen anything about it, reach out to the team, learn some more about it. So we've got that coming up, one full day of virtual learning. For those of you that might be near the Baltimore area, the Grant Professionals Association annual Grant Summit is coming up. That's the very last few days of October, but that'll be happening in the city of Baltimore. Let me know if you want more details. I can always give you a link. You can also participate in that conference virtually if you just don't, it's not in the cards, it's not in the budget to travel to Baltimore this year. There is a great virtual option. Actually, some of my team members aren't going to Baltimore. They'll be there virtually with you in the rooms too. Wanted to flag that. And then the third thing is that the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference is coming up once again. It's not only about grants, it's about all storytelling across all forms of fundraising, whether it's individuals or whether it's about grants or bequests, all storytelling. I'm not an affiliate with anyone, so just telling you about this is so that everybody's aware of some of the really cool, big professional development that's coming up, including the big one here at Native Learning Center, and then 2 other big national conferences. But nonprofit storytelling is in San Diego this year. And Holly, I see that you said you're in San Diego, and so I wanted to make sure that you are aware that there's going to be a really cool national conference in your backyard. I think like November 13th, I think is the first day of the conference. So just a little bit about what's coming up that our team is so excited about as we're in such a big professional development season for folks. If you have any other PD opportunities you're excited about and you want to talk about it in the chat, I'd love for you to do that. Okay, but back to today's topic at hand. How do we tell our SMART story in our grant application? I'm known for being a little bit punny. Yes, I love puns as a sense of humor. And when we talk about SMART stories, I'm not being a smarty pants, all right? I'm not being sarcastic. I instead am using an acronym that grant makers of all shapes and sizes have come to expect as the structure that you will use when you are writing about your programs, when you're writing about your projects, when you're writing about what you intend to do to achieve the proposed outcome, the proposed impact. So we need to think about what that looks like in our application. That's the entire focus of today's session. It is one small slice of grants, but it is an incredibly important part. So how do we craft compelling SMART objectives? Before we can talk about what the objectives are, we need to first understand something that's a little bit higher level, something that's a bigger umbrella idea related to your projects and programs. It's about your goal, or maybe goals, plural. Here's what I think would be really fun today to make this actionable and maybe even get some draft language that you're going to get to use in your own proposals. I would encourage you to either grab a notebook or a pad of paper, even a single piece of paper if you want, or open a digital file. And I'd like for you to write at the top goals and objectives, or to type goals and objectives. I want you to, before now you think about what should my goal statement be, you don't have to write that in yet. All I want right now is goals and objectives as your heading. Either you wrote it out or you typed it in. I want you to center yourself on one particular project or program that your tribal organization needs grant funding for in the next 12 months. If you're willing to tell me in the chat box what that is, I would love to hear. I would imagine that you've got lots of different programs, lots of different services, lots of different projects that need grant funding, but that's too many options for today's exercise. I want you to pick just one. Maybe it's an infrastructure project, maybe it's a housing related project, maybe it is a STEM programming related project. I don't know, but there's no right or wrong answer because it is what you know is a priority, and I want you to have one. Okay, so Holly, you said you need grant money that can be used to pay for staff salaries. Can you be more specific for me, please, and in your thinking as well, about what are those staff going to do? And maybe you say, I'm supposed to fund all staff salaries. That's a really big, broad ask for a grant maker. So usually we're going to make the ask about salaries for one program, one project to one grant maker. So great. Oh, good. Child welfare staff salaries. Okay. See how much more specific all of a sudden we got? Holly, thank you so much for participating in the public chat. If anyone else wants to share in the chat, what is the project or the program, the initiative that you are going to use in today's exercises, that you're going to use as your centering focus while we talk about goals and ultimately get to objectives? As you're thinking about it, perhaps you're willing to type it in the chat. If you don't type it in the chat, please write it on your piece of paper. Please type it in your document. What is it? What project, what program, what initiative, what service, what is the thing that you're thinking about in your tribal organization that you're going to use as your frame of reference for everything else we do today together? The reason I want you to have one thing in mind is so that you can now write down. Don't worry, penmanship doesn't count, spelling doesn't count, grammar doesn't count in this moment. So don't worry about the wordsmithing or about fine-tuning. I want you to write your overarching goal for the project or program. So in Holly's example, I get it. The money itself is going to pay for the staff salaries for those who are providing child welfare services. What is the goal, not of why you need to pay for the salaries. We get it. If you don't pay for their salaries, there's not going to be anybody to do the work. The goal I want you to think about in this case for Holly is, what is the big broad goal related to the child welfare services themselves? What is the big, broad, intangible statement? Why is this important? So Holly's going to have a unique goal. It's going to be just for Holly's priority for where they need to find funding. All right, Indira said that the funding they need to find is for staff strategic planning. Great. All right, so now we've got two distinct examples in our chat. And Indira should be jotting down or typing out, doesn't have to be in the chat, what is the big, broad, overarching general principle related to what are you trying to achieve by participating, by providing this strategic planning opportunity. It's not that you just want to have everybody together. The act of the strategic planning, that's an important activity, but that's not why it's important. What is the goal? Why do you want to do the strategic planning? That would be what Indira would be writing down. Many of you in the room, so I'm guessing that we should have as many goals articulated either on your hard piece of paper that you've got at your desk or in the digital document you're typing in. We should have that many unique goals that have just been written. Again, penmanship doesn't count, spelling, grammar, all set to the side for the moment. Very rare that I get to say that as a grant professional, and I'm not mad about it. Pretty excited, actually. So once you have your goal, this is like the big, you can think about it as an umbrella. Everything you're going to talk about in your grant application needs to fall under the umbrella. You want to keep it dry. You want to keep it under the umbrella, real nice and tight, so it's right there. Or perhaps instead you think about the goal as the filter for how you're going to make decisions. If I include this in my grant, if I talk about this in my grant, does this make sense? Does it help my grant maker understand more? So you can use it as a filter for what you include or don't include in your application or budget. Once you have this big, broad goal, then we can talk about your objectives. Then we can talk about starting to make smart objectives that the rest of our narrative is going to really circle around. Now, I'm curious, when we think about objectives, let's pull up our formal definition here on the screen for you. When we think about our objectives, see how the O in objectives, I've got it replaced by like a bullseye? The idea that we're getting really precise. The reason is that objectives, the specificity, the precision of what we are sharing is going to be giving the detail to a grant maker about how you, your colleagues, your fellow tribal organization members, or your fellow peer employees are going to achieve the goal. So your objectives, they're going to be really tangible. They're going to be, hard, concrete, precise. When we think about objectives, we quickly end up thinking about not just one O word as it relates to grant applications, but actually we're going to be ending up with 3. So I wanted to quick define the difference between outputs and outcomes. Outcomes, they are, so we've got objectives, outputs, and outcomes. We've got 3 O's that we're looking at here. We're going to be spending our time writing SMART objectives. But what do those other 2 O's mean? Grant makers use all 3 within applications. Sometimes they make a mistake and confuse which one they're asking about. But so I'll talk about outcomes in a minute. We're going to talk about objectives the whole rest of the time. Let's look at outputs first. The things that we can count. The number of people we serve, the number of staff whose salary we have funded, the number of staff who have participated in strategic planning, the number of meals that were delivered, the number of homes that had some form of rehabilitation done, things we can count. Count how many people are there. I can count how many meals were delivered. Outputs are what we count after we have conducted some activities. We have done some of our work. Outcomes are after we've counted those things, after outputs. They're about what did we achieve? What changed? Behavior, skill, knowledge, something that changed. But we won't know for sure how many outputs will we achieve. For sure, are we going to achieve the outcomes? These are our anticipated ideas, the anticipated number of meals, the anticipated changes in behavior. The objectives that we're going to be looking at, objectives are telling the grant maker how we're going to achieve our goal. What is the work we're going to do? What are the steps we're going to take? You might even think of objectives like rungs on a ladder. With each objective that we write out, what we are doing is giving grant makers a deeper understanding. And it's sort of like they're climbing up the ladder till they're at the very top. And they have full understanding of what we're trying to achieve, of what outcomes we might see happen, the behavior change, the knowledge gain as a result of the work we've just done. As I mentioned, lots of funders and also folks just in the nonprofit sector will be awesome and well-intentioned, yet sometimes make a mistake in their understanding of the difference between objectives, outputs, and outcomes. So I wanted to share with you a blog post that a member of my team wrote, and it was about the difference between objectives, what we're going to spend our time writing in the SMART structure today, and our outcomes. So after some of the great work has happened, being able to look and reflect on what has changed and what impact we are working towards. So I just put the link to that blog post so that you can go read it if you'd like. At your convenience, it's in the public chat. On the screen now, hopefully don't go to the blog post, go read it later if you can, stick with me here. On the screen now, I have the definition for SMART. I told you that it's not about being a smarty pants. It wasn't a sarcastic statement about what our story will be like, but rather SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, some grant makers say attainable, relevant, some grant makers say realistic, and time-bound. Some grant makers might say timely. Good news, they all still add up to the acronym SMART. I am curious, could you please let me know, if you're willing, in the chat box, why for yes and for no? How many of you were already familiar with this acronym before I pulled it up on the screen today? Could you let me know if this is an acronym that you've seen before? Many grant makers use it. Okay, so I'm not surprised that a number of you have seen this before. It's okay if you haven't. What I want to ask as a secondary question, though, is when you think about writing a SMART objective, so a single objective statement that is all 5 of these things, what would you rate your comfort level is? There's no judgment in your answer. We're not reporting it to anyone else, but in this moment, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, not comfortable just learning about SMART objectives, 10, super comfortable, but always looking for new tips and tricks. Could you let me know in the chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, your current comfort level with SMART objectives? I'm going to be super honest, super candid, a little bit vulnerable too. When I started my work in the grant field, I did not. I was a grant maker. I was a program officer. I was allowed to help lead and manage the program, the process of giving away grant money. When I sat in that seat for the first time, was not comfortable with SMART objectives. Nope. Took some learning. Took some talking with colleagues who are really into the evaluation of programs and projects to really understand what that M meant, how to make it stronger. Took seeing programs in action to understand what a SMART objective really meant. How was it going to make things stronger for me as a grant maker to understand what SMART objectives were being put forward? Not comfortable. Not at all at the beginning. With a lot of practice, not just to read it and understand it, but wow, to actually write a SMART objective. I've been in the field for 25 years, and I will tell you that it is still not my natural way of writing. The way I think about it, because it's never going to be the sentence that comes out of my fingers when I am typing. I might get elements of it, but I think about what is each element, how am I going to connect the dots? And I make notes for myself about what they are, and then I write SMART objectives. And I say that, so I'm like, I'm not even a 10, because I feel like my method, it works for me. A little bit clunky, but it's what works for me. And I would always rely on others that are also close to the program giving me feedback to ensure that it is the best SMART objective it could be. So don't feel pressure today, please, that you have to have this perfect. Your job is to help create some of the structure, maybe to get a draft going, and then to engage others in your organization in getting those SMART objectives polished. So under each of these elements, our S, M, A, R, and T, you will see that there's a few additional points underneath the letters. It's so that you can understand what is connected to this letter. What within our single objective statement makes it specific? What makes it time-bound? This is, I think, a pretty nice little reference slide for you to think about what is a SMART objective. But you might also consider this as a slightly different option. Everybody sees and understands work in different ways. That's why I wanted to give you more of a visual structure. This one's more text-based. They're sharing the same basic information. We're trying in our specifics to understand what is happening with these program activities. Trying to think about who is doing them. We bounce down to the bottom at time limited. We're trying to think about when it's happening. That M is indicated by what? How will we know what's happening? Our achievable component, this is about the objective you're writing and how it connects to the time frame you have for the grant award and the grant budget. So do you have 12 months for the grant? Do you have 24 months for the grant? 36 months for the grant? That influences what could be achievable. Do you have $5,000? Do you have $50,000? Do you have $500,000? Do you have $5.5 million? That's going to impact what is actually achievable. The bigger the dollar amount, the more zeros there are, the more, well, grandiose your proposal will be in terms of what you can achieve. So that's what achievable is about. What you're proposing compared to time period and budget. Are relevant and realistic? Are. This is about how does your SMART objective connect? How does it fit under that big, broad goal, that umbrella idea, that our objectives are all going to fit under that umbrella? Your reviewers need to see the connection between your objectives and your big, broad goal that you have stated. When we think about what these statements look like within a proposal, it might be in a 3-page narrative, and you've got a few objective statements within it. Prior to grant makers putting such a strong emphasis on SMART objectives, so I'm going pretty far back in time here, grant makers would readily accept an objective that was something like provide good quality services to all clients. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Yeah, sounds nice. But how would we know what that really means? How are we going to define good? How are we going to define a particular quality level? It's in the eye of the beholder, or perhaps in the eye of the grantee or of the grantee reporter. The SMART style that's written on the right-hand side on your screen, this is more of what is expected by grant makers now. Increase client service satisfaction to 90% this fiscal year. So 90% of clients will report that they are satisfied with this service. In maybe the fiscal year is January to December, maybe it's July 1 to June 30. That actually isn't the critical point because the fiscal year phrase, it doesn't matter what our actual calendar fiscal year is. A grant maker understands it's a 1-year period of time unique to your organization. Great. They have all sorts of deeper understanding from the sentence on the right than the sentence on the left. They understand what might come in through their grant report. What might they expect to see? Having a little bit of fun with the idea. On the screen right now, pretty traditional, basic language we might see in any nonprofit application. It could have been for health, it could have been for education, could have been anywhere. But I thought, well, we'll just have a little bit more fun with it. This youngster, they are asking for funding because they said, I will vanquish evil in a single afternoon. And what a noble statement from this little youngster. Like, oh, I applaud your enthusiasm and your passion for your work. Great job. But I've got a lot of questions, right? We don't know any of the details. This youngster, now this one reminds me of an old movie. It might be too old as a pop culture reference, but The Rocketeer. So this youngster has created some sort of little backpack, wearing it. Looks like he thinks he's going to fly. He's got his little flying glasses and hat. And says, I will increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter before dinner tonight. I have all sorts of details. I mean, I'm like cheering this little youngster on. I hope you can do it. Both youngsters are asking for all of, we're going to say $10, right? Like big money to little kids. But so they want $10. If we look at the older style, I will vanquish evil in a single afternoon. That's option 1. Option 2, you only have your $10. You can't split them. It's just a $10 bill. We can't rip it in half. I will increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter before dinner tonight. This is option 2. You're the grant maker. Which youngster is going to get the $10 grant? vanquishing evil, option 1. You can type the number 1 into the chat box for me. Or option 2, trying to increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter before dinner tonight. I know they're so cute, you don't want to have to pick between them, but this is the real rub for grant makers. You're like, oh, they're both great. I want to fund them both, but like, really, we absolutely cannot rip that $10 bill in half. It'll do no one any good if it's ripped in half. So which one? Number 1, vanquish evil. Number 2, increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter before dinner tonight. My heart hurts too. I want to help them both, but it's unanimous for folks who have participated in the chat. We're going to make the grant award to the youngster on the screen right now. It was not easy, but I'm proud of you for doing it. And the reason that you felt more comfortable is that it's not a guarantee. This is really important. It's not a guarantee to the grant maker that absolutely this youngster is going to get off the ground by 1 meter. Youngster might make it off the ground by half a meter. On the other hand, youngster might make it off the ground by 1.5 meters. It could be a little below, could be a little bit over, could be right on. It's not a grant contract. It is not an absolute promise of delivery. Rather, it is a based on everything that I know right now as a grant applicant, this is what I believe we can achieve, in this case, our time-bound element, before dinner tonight. So I really want you to remember that it is not, you should do your best to get your objectives to have as accurate, as close of a prediction for your measurement, whatever the measurement number might be, whether we're talking percentages, or in this case, distance, or people, or number of classes. Do your due diligence to come up with the best number, your best educated number you can put in there based on everything around you and all your assumptions. But know that it might be a little over, it might be a little under, and that's okay. All right, very good job being grant makers. I have a slide for each of our SMART elements so that we can think about how are we going to build our SMART statement, our single SMART objective. In fact, you might end up with 3 to 5 SMART objectives, maybe 2, maybe 7, but like 3 to 5 is pretty common. And along the way, you're jotting down some notes here. You've got that document. You wrote goals and objectives, and then you wrote your big goal. I'd like for you to write or type specifics. And I want you to start jotting down ideas. And what you should be jotting down, who are you serving? Who's providing the service? Who are your collaborative partners? So think about all the elements of who that you possibly can. Then I want you thinking about what. What are they doing? What are the students doing? What are the educators doing? What are the child welfare staff doing? What are the staff participating in the strategic planning doing? So take just a quick few seconds here and just jot down everything that comes to mind for you. And penmanship doesn't matter, spelling, grammar, all set to the side. So just as fast as you can come up with ideas about who is going to do the work or benefit from the work, be part of the program, be part of the project. We want the who's on both sides. And on the what is happening? Hopefully you've got a list, at least 6, 7 things long between your combined who and what. You can add to this list. This is not concrete, not at all fixed. This is just your initial brainstorm as you're thinking about the different details that you know about that key program that you wrote your goal statement about. What we're going to be gathering are also details that help us build and frame out our entire narrative, not just our SMART objectives. This is where we're learning the different details, and we're going to start to place them where they belong in the application. Once it comes time to write your actual SMART objectives as single sentences, yes, single sentences. So what I want you to think about is a single action verb. Each objective statement, once you're done, you'll have lots of who's and what's. And as you start to put them together, who is doing what? The teacher is providing a workshop. Teacher, providing action verb, good, workshop. So that one, set that to the side. You can wordsmith it, add more things, but that's going to be one objective statement. So as you're thinking about which who goes with which what, when you have one action verb, that becomes an objective by itself. If in your drafting you find that you have two action verbs in one objective sentence, you've gone ahead and smushed them together. Go ahead and pull them apart. It is clearer for your grant maker, for your reviewers. Your story is easier for them to understand if each objective statement has one action verb. Okay, so you've got some good building blocks for writing a SMART objective. Now on your piece of paper or in your digital document, would love to have you write the word or type the word measurable. For measurable, I want you to think about how you measure and how you evaluate. You might have to ask yourself an earlier question on that though, and it might be, how do we define our success? That might be a question that you have to ask yourself in advance of understanding what do we measure, what do we evaluate, how do we evaluate. I'm curious, do any of you use things like pre and post test surveys ever in any of your work? Those are things that are being done to help gather data. They're going to help you analyze what's happened, what has been learned. They're going to help you understand what outcomes you have achieved, what change in knowledge may have occurred. So those would be the perfect thing to write down now under measurable. Pre-test, post-test. Great, right? Like now we have two ideas of what we're going to use to gather data so that we would be able to say, as indicated by what? Indicated by the results of our pre and our post-test surveys. And you say, well, what else would I be counting? What else would I be gathering for data? How do you know how many people went to the strategic planning retreat? And the answer, I don't know, Indira, it might not be this, but you might say, oh, well, we have a sign-in sheet. And when folks come and they get there for the day and they get checked in for the strategic planning activity, they sign in and then we keep a copy of the sign-in for the day. And that's how we know for sure, here's our record of our data. This is how we know how many people participated in strategic planning. Great, okay, but write down that sign-in sheet. That's actually an important element of your measurable component. In Holly's example, if the point is to ensure that staff salaries are paid for the child welfare staff, well, how do we know that they've been paid? Payroll journals. But do grant makers care about paying for staff for child welfare services? I'm sorry to pick on you about this one. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you're jotting down a lot of notes. So I'm not picking on you. I just think it's going to make for a very interesting conversation here or consideration point for folks. The answer is no. Folks at grant-making organizations don't care. I mean, they do care because obviously it's about people's livelihood, but they don't care if people's salaries are being paid. That's not why they're making grants to your tribal organization. What do they care about? What they care about is the impact that's being created, the support and service that these children are receiving. So in Holly's case, yes, Payroll journals would be a measurement to show how many staff salaries were supported with the grant. But there's going to be other measurement components. How would the folks know how many children were served over that grant award period? Some sort of records from the department. How would folks know what sort of benefit or impact that support had? There's probably going to be some assessment records, some case notes, maybe some surveys from teachers or other community members. Kind of throwing some ideas out there, but there's going to be other elements that help measure the ultimate impact that these staff are being paid to help create. So hopefully you've jotted down at least 2 different ways that you are going to count or evaluate what is happening related to your project or program. We're not going to put them all into one sentence yet. We're not there. We're going to think about our A as our next item, because we're going in the order that makes sense for it to say SMART. Achievable or attainable isn't necessarily what we write in our statement, though. It's really about the context of our statement. So the notes I want you to make under achievable. For your ideal grant, how long of a grant do you want? Do you want one that's 12 months, 24, 36, 48, 60 months? Go ahead. This is your ideal. If you are already looking at a specific opportunity, the note you should make, what is the grant award period I'm applying for? But in this exercise today, I let you pick your ideal. But if you're applying for a grant and you know it's only for 12 months, when you're thinking about your A, your achievable, write down 12-month grant period so that you remember, I have to ensure that my objective is achievable in these 12 months. There's a second thing I want you to write down. Under achievable, what is your ideal grant award amount? For this particular project or program you're talking about, how much money do you need? What is it that you're asking for? If any of you want to type that number into the chat, you are welcome to do so. It might be 50,000, it might be 500,000, no judgment on how many zeros. But as you're thinking in today's exercise about achievable, you get to define what amount you want. If you have a grant opportunity already in mind, maybe it's a request for proposals and you get to ask for 1.2 million. You could ask for less, but you can't ask for any more. So then right under the achievable part, maximum $1.2 million. Or maybe the maximum is $150,000. Great, write that down. What is the actual limit? It's not that you are writing those limits into your SMART objectives, but they're helping keeping you in the guardrails of what your grant maker thinks will be achievable within the time you have awarded and the dollar amount that they're going to fund you for. We can continue in your notes, again, whether on paper or digital, and we can think about what is realistic or perhaps what is relevant. They get used interchangeably in our SMART acronym. Now we need to think about our goal statement. So the R isn't something extra that you're writing into your objective. Rather, it's about, am I clear on what the goal is and how the dots connect between my goal statement and this particular objective? In fact, I might have this goal statement and I might, as I said, have like 3 to 5 different objectives that it connects to. So if it's helpful for you as you're jotting down ideas and thinking about how to write a SMART objective, write down that big goal in your digital or physical paper. If you look up to the top or you scroll to the top, it should already be there because that's what we jotted down first. If we have a SMART objective, I shouldn't say, if we have an objective and it does not connect to the goal, it is just an objective. It's no longer a SMART objective because it doesn't connect to the goal that we've stated for the project or program. So it would be irrelevant, maybe nice, but not critical for the particular goal that you have stated. And our last of the 5 elements is actually where some folks will start when they do drafting of SMART objectives. But to follow along with the order of our acronym, we get to the T in SMART last. When will this particular thing, this action, this activity, when will it happen? In the second quarter? In the calendar year? In the 2025-2026 school year? In February of 2026? Bi-weekly for the period of the grant award? All of those are examples of time-bound components that you might include in your SMART objective. Some are like really date specific in the way that I just gave a few examples. Others were more open-ended. Bi-weekly for the entirety of the grant award period. I don't know what's the start and the end of the grant award period. Maybe it's flexible for the grant maker. And so I just want them to know that, like, hey, over the course of the year, or whatever it is you're going to fund me bi-weekly, this thing's going to happen. Both are okay. Those that are directly firmly anchored to something on the calendar and those that are relatively anchored to the calendar. They can still understand the sequence of activities, but it isn't as critical that they know it is on this particular Tuesday in this particular month in this particular year. It's more fluid. But that is where some folks will start if they're stuck in drafting a SMART objective. All right, so you should have a lot of notes. I'm hoping you have a lot of notes. Whether you have been jotting them down or typing them, you should have a fair number of notes. But before we put it all together, I want to give you some practice finding some of the elements so that you can reflect on your notes and see if there's anything that gets inspired for you to add under your S notes, your M notes, your A, your R, or your T notes. On the screen, we have an objective statement. By the end of the school year, district health educators will have delivered lessons on assertive communication skills to 90% of youth participants in the middle school HIV prevention curriculum. What do we see here that are specifics? We see that district health educators, so the who is doing the delivery and the who is receiving delivery, are both highlighted here. So those are important specifics because we can see our who. We could also think about what is included in this statement. We could say that the what, assertive communication skills, what is being delivered to help them learn that, this particular curriculum. You might even say, well, where? We could assume from this statement here, where? It's in school, because we're talking about the actual school educators, those employed by the district. So we're trying to see what journalistic questions can we highlight, circle, understand. If we look at that same statement, what is measurable? You're right, there's a number there. We see the 90%. So it's helpful, but I'm curious, does anyone know from what you can see on the screen how many youth participants that would actually mean? Does it mean 50 youth participants? Does it mean 150? Does it mean 550? We don't know what the population of middle school students is by size in this statement. So it's nice that there's a percent here. Okay, 90% of folks will have participated. Great. Funders like, I get it. Not everybody's going to participate in all of these extra special programs. Might be absent that day, might be signed out for something, not participate, fine. But are you trying to have the grant maker know all the details about your community? Should they, for some reason, know how big or how small your middle school is? That's a lot of pressure and a lot of assumed knowledge for that grant maker. So having a percent, good. What would be better? To, if you say 90%, parentheses, 186 students. Or to say 186 students, parentheses, 90%. Put that actual end value in there. Let the grant maker know how many we're talking about. Don't make them try to go find the big number so they can do the percent math. You're making them solve math equations. Not a good story. You want them to stay in the SMART objective with you. So if you're going to use a percent sign, you want your grant maker in that same sentence. How can you tell them what number you're actually talking about? When we're looking for our A's, our achievable elements, what is attainable? Again, this is against timeline and against budget. So by timeline, what do we see as a clue? At the end of the school year. And so the grant maker could think, oh, we've got for the grant award period in the 12 months, yeah, that makes sense. Good. So you're actually the time-bound element. We see that a little earlier to help us with our achievable. And in terms of how that fits against the budget, your story is not just this sentence. Your story is what does the grant maker see in your budget form? They're wondering how many district health educators are in that budget. Are there any? Is it one? If you only had one, but in your statement here it says educators plural, grant maker might have some questions, right? Why'd you only put in one educator, but you kept saying educators plural in your narrative? That's an inconsistency that raises questions for the grant maker. Youth participants in this curriculum. Not all curricula are free. Some, especially if they are some sort of evidence-based program, require that you buy rights to use the curriculum or that you buy the supplies through the person who created the curriculum or the company that created the curriculum. So the grant maker is probably also looking in the budget for anything related to supplies or the actual training materials. What else are we looking for? In our R, they're looking for what is realistic. Now, I haven't shown you a goal statement for this sentence, have I? So without the goal sentence, how would you know if this objective is really SMART? The trick question. You can't. It'd be SMAT, not SMART, without actually seeing the goal statement. So if you have not yet written a goal for the project or program you need funding for, you can't have a SMART objective yet because you don't have that comparison goal to bounce ideas against and to ensure that those dots are connected. So you have to be able to see the goal in order to confirm that it truly is realistic. Now that time bound, I actually called that one out because we were at achievable as we walked the acronym in its order. And as I've mentioned, many folks, including some of my own colleagues, love to, when they're drafting, it might not be where it ends, they might wordsmith further, but if they're stuck, if they're looking at the blink cursor on the screen, they're trying to write a SMART objective, what do I know? I know the period of time, and that's what they start with. And then they build elements from there. The reason I like to give that as such a strong example so that you don't feel pressure that you have to write in order of the acronym. You don't have to write it S, then M, then think about A, then think about R, then think about T. It's very unlikely. You could think about the T and the S first. Could be S first, then T first. Could be T first, then S. But A and R are usually last. All right, I'd love to let you think about this and have a run at a practice example. This time, now that I've made the point that if you don't have a goal for your program, it's really difficult to make any judgment about R and to be smart. So it's going to be SMAT. So we're going to be smarts this time. It will be possible because now you have a program goal that you can compare the objective against. On the screen is our goal: to increase family caregivers' understanding of how to manage difficult behaviors in those with Alzheimer's disease so they can remain in their home environment instead of long-term care. An objective. It's not fully smart. It is a great draft, but it is not fully smart. What is missing? We have 90% of family caregivers of those with Alzheimer's disease will participate in our education workshops. So what is missing? Go ahead and type a letter into the chat if you have an idea. It could be S, specifics, M, measurable, A, attainable, R, relevant, T, time bound. Is there anything missing? Or if you prefer, like, what questions do you have? If you were a grant maker trying to decide if you were going to say yes to this funding or not, what would you support? Feel free to ask questions if that feels like the better way for you to answer it. Oh, yeah, we got folks like the T is missing, Diane. Time bound. Yes. We got unanimous decision on that one. You are right. The T is missing. We don't know when this is happening. The reality is, in that statement, the S and the M, the specifics, are so weak, and the measurement details are also weak. So it's very tricky to say with certainty that this is possible within the time period we have and the budget we're given. So the A, we're going to say, is missing. And the R is missing because we're not real sure if this is actually going to do the trick in terms of the goal, keeping people in their home environment instead of long-term care. Is participating in a workshop enough? I might say, well, I guess I'm going to have to write some more objectives then to prove the point. It's not just about the participation. We're going to have to do something that gives us an objective that points towards what knowledge would be gained, what self-reported knowledge would be gained, what pre- and post-survey information would be gained. We need more. So here's something that's a little bit more. By the end of the calendar year, oh, there's the time element that everybody wanted. Yes, there it is. 90% of family caregivers utilizing the Alzheimer's Association Adult Day Program. Oh, I want to pause right there because now sometimes folks will say, are we talking about like a whole country for that first objective, right? Like, well, what's the goal? A specific adult day program, something geographically limiting. That's like a program name. Maybe it's a specific city or a specific county, but we now have a deeper understanding, not perfect, but a deeper understanding that it's not all of the country and all caregivers of those with Alzheimer's disease. All right, back to the objective. And so it's that they have participated not just in an education workshop, but in the Family Caregiver Education Series. I wonder if that's like evidence-based or if it's trademarked. I want to know more details, but in terms of an objective statement, I have a lot more clarity, don't I, about the specifics? And this time it got pushed. It's not just about participating, but that they will self-report an increased understanding about how to handle difficult behaviors. Feels a lot more connected to the goal now, doesn't it? It's not only about the participation, but about what folks are learning and self-reporting from their participation. So I call it smarter because, yes, we could certainly wordsmith some more. It's pretty long, but there was like a really long program name in there, plus the name of the education series. That's okay, but maybe we want to wordsmith it a little bit more. I want to show you one more if you're up for it. You did such a good job. Let's see what you think about this one. In this objective, we're saying that teachers will be trained on the selected scientifically based health education curriculum. You're right. I went back to not showing you a goal. I know. So I'm just going to acknowledge that one, right? That's a gimme for you. You're like, Diane, it's going to be super hard because you didn't give us a goal for us to tell you about the R, right? The relevant, the realistic, because that's what connects to our goal. But for the others, what are our options? What do we think is missing, or what questions do we have? What do you want more of? S, specifics, M, measurable, A, attainable, achievable, T, time-bound. Let me know in the chat, what do you want more of, or something that just needs to be added all together? What do we think should be modified? I, as a reviewer, because I still serve as a reviewer multiple times a year, when I get to objectives within a proposal, whether they're called out like in a table or a special format, or they're just within the body of the narrative, I'm not trying to ask lots of questions, but really, if I find myself reading an objective and then like making some notes, but what about when this is going to happen? What about these teachers? What grade levels are we talking about? Health education, that's pretty broad. What are we talking about here? So when I find myself asking questions or like typing them into an Adobe note on the side, whether it's either one, doesn't matter. That is an indicator that it's not fully smart. It's an indicator that we need more specifics. And in this case, Latasha, high five. Like yep, we already knew the R was missing. I didn't show you a goal, but wow, right? It's a nice sentence. Don't get me wrong. But for it to be an objective, a smart objective, what do we need? A whole lot more detail. All right, so by year 2 of the project, I like this as an example because it's not just a 1-year, 12-month project. So we got multi-years. So this is saying to the grant maker, by year 2 of said projects that you're funding, not just generally teachers, but LEA staff will have trained 75% of health education teachers in the school district on a selected scientifically based health education curriculum. So I still have some questions. That's why I left it at smarter, not smart. I'm like, LEA, what does that acronym stand for? But it's helpful because now I know who is training the receiving who, the health education teachers. Good, helpful for me to understand. I don't know how many staff are doing the training. I don't know how many staff are receiving training. I still have questions about like what the curriculum is, but I certainly know a lot more. And perhaps we're fortunate that like the objective typed above it or the objective typed below it is going to give more of the details, but there still are a lot of assumptions that you're letting your reviewer make when they're looking at your SMART objective. So as you're drafting, you're taking your notes from our conversation, just right? You started jotting down your notes 30, 35 minutes ago, maybe 40. When you're taking those elements and you're starting to put them together, it's a little bit like a puzzle piece, isn't it? You're thinking about how do I take the different elements that I know, the things that I feel confident about, whether I'm the one implementing the program or not, how do I take them and pull them together into the smartest objectives possible? It's going to be like a puzzle piece, and you might slide one over here and one over there. And there's something that some grant makers, typically more foundation, not government, but some grant makers are also asking you an extra level. And what they're asking you about is if your objective isn't just SMART, but if it's SMARTY, which then does sound an awful lot more like me being sarcastic and saying smarty pants. But by smarty, they mean the I and the E, inclusion and equity. And so it's more that you have to put into your sentence. Sometimes it's also about language choice instead of what you might be picking. what it really is, what the grant makers are looking to get out of your SMART objective is how is your community, how are the members of your tribal organization being a part of the planning for the work, the evaluation of the work, the direction and the priority of the work. Not necessarily the conversation we're having for government funding right now, but it is still present in many foundation proposals. So I did want to highlight that expanded acronym for you. But for the most part, we return to our base, which is the SMART objective. And so in the links that were shared at the beginning, what's in your learning space here in the platform, not only do you have the slides from today, but our SMART Objective Toolkit does have within it, there's a PDF for you to use, but it does have another spot for you to think about drafting. If you take your notes from today, your S, your M, your A, your R, and your T, and you do draft them, whether it's in our PDF or you take some time to put it together, and you'd like some feedback, I'm 100% happy to have you email them to me, ask for feedback, and my team and I will reply with some feedback. How many times did I say feedback in that sentence? A lot. So that hopefully you get that I'm happy to not just answer your questions here as we're talking about this concept, but to give you meaningful feedback as it relates to your written work. I can pose some questions. I'm a first-time reader, just like I was a grant maker. What about this? What about that? Have you considered adding this detail? So I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do it actually right here, right now, but it's very rare that someone in just this short class of 90 minutes is going to have a SMART objective they want to type in the chat. That option is also here for you. If you've got an objective that you want feedback on, you are welcome to type it into the chat and we could look at it right now. But usually it's more like after. So I can't assign real homework. Nope, the Native Learning Center team is like, you can't assign homework. Not possible, Diane. All right, but I can give you an optional homework challenge. And if you want to write your SMART objectives, 1, 2, 5, whatever it is, and provide them to me via email, my team and I will give you feedback to help make them even smarter than your initial draft. How many of you think you might do that? Apply for yes? Question mark, not sure, don't want to commit? No, no pressure. You don't have to answer, but I'm real serious about it. And my email is like in every single deck and all the things that we do, but you know what? Just make sure you got it. There it is in the chat box as well. Now, a related blog post about SMART objectives. Let me make sure I put that since I'm thinking that now. Here is another blog post. Yes, you guessed it, about SMART objectives. Our team can't talk about it enough. We love it. My gosh, Maggie from our team, some of you might have met her in other webinars before. Like, she grins from ear to ear when she talks about SMART objectives. She just loves them. But what do you do with them after you have drafted them? You might say, great, Diane, I did it. I took your toolkit and I've drafted 4 and you gave me feedback. Now what? Well, now we have to take what we learned in crafting our SMART objectives and think about where and how they fit within our entire application. This is where the storytelling part comes in. We want to make sure that our entire grant application, whether it's a tiny narrative or it's a really big narrative with lots of attachments, we want to make sure that the story we're telling is consistent across the entire application. And the SMART objectives, oh, they're really helpful. The grant maker can start to visualize the work you're going to do. What is this going to look like when it gets funded and the work starts to happen? But we have to overlay these elements into the rest of our application. So I said in a quick phrase before that SMART objectives are helping us to answer our basic journalistic questions. Who's participating? Who's teaching? Who's learning? What is it we're teaching? What is it we're delivering? Where are we doing the teaching? Where are we doing the delivery of service? When is it happening? Once a quarter? Every week? Now, the why it's happening, That really gets to the relevant. Is it connected to our goal? Why are we doing this? Because it will help us achieve our goal. So don't shortchange the why question. Why are we doing this thing? Why is this objective important? Look up at that goal that you wrote earlier in your document, or scroll up. That is your why. We're doing this because it's going to help us achieve our goal. That ensures that we're connecting that dot. We're going to be relevant. We're going to be realistic. Now, how are we going to know we did it? How are we going to know that we got to that many kids? How are we going to know we delivered that many meals? Oh, you know that you delivered that many meals because each of the volunteer drivers keeps track and then turns in their delivery sheet, and then that gets entered into a client database, and then that turns into a monthly report. There's a lot of details, and well, we don't have that much room in one sentence to add all those details, but we understand all of the steps that are taken, so we can talk about, we know because of these attendance sheets. And we can see, we are certain that those steps are going to happen, and we're going to get the data so that we can report on it, but ask lots of questions. I'm a grant professional. I am not at all. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a healthcare professional. I am not an education specialist for an environmental conservation organization. 4 quick examples of things that my team and I have been writing about this week alone. None of us are those things by degree, by practice, by trade. None of them. We're grant professionals. And what that means is that we need to ask lots of questions, lots of journalistic questions, to get the information to help write smart objectives about the work that will be done. Might it be a little easier, or I should say faster sometimes, if we were the actual expert, the person doing the work, and therefore we could do the whole thing, write the smart objective from start to finish? Might be a little faster, but that's not always how it works in an organization. So if you are the person writing the grant, but not the person with all the expertise about the program design or the project itself, that's okay. You know what sort of questions to ask so that you can gather the information and write a great objective statement, or 2, 3, or 4, that connects to your goal. So your basic journalistic questions are where you can start for some inquiry, appreciative inquiry, if you will, to learn more. Some of my other favorite questions: what does success look like? How will you know if you have achieved the desired success? If we are thinking about what does success look like, a grant maker is reading your grant application for the first time. They've got a stack of proposals. They're trying to decide who's going to get funded, and what is it that they will say about your application in just a quick word or phrases. If they get excited about it, if they read it and they think this is a really nice proposal, I think that this one would be a good fit for us, they might turn in the physical room where they're doing the review work, or they might look to somebody else in this room and be like, oh, this is the one that, yeah, they were working with children in the community who are in foster care. That one. And here's the success that they're seeing, and they're talking about after-school programs because that's going to help with their test scores and their long-term job achievement. I'm sorry, Holly, I probably just went way far off from what you really wanted to say, but right, I still was thinking about your staff salaries. Again, it's not the success about paying the staff. It's about the success for what's happening with the kids that are receiving support through the staff that are being paid. For Indira, what would success look like? Yeah, all right. It is not just that we can show you the strategic plan, right? I mean, that is a deliverable, but that is not the ultimate success. The ultimate success would be that now we have an agreed upon plan for our priorities and how we're going to move forward to achieve these big things as a community. What success looks like is what you want the funder to remember, what you would want them to turn and say to another grant maker. That is the most important thing that you want them to remember about your proposal. They're not going to memorize your SMART objectives. As hard as we work at them to make them as smart as possible, they're not going to memorize them. They're not going to be what they say. They're going to paraphrase it in their own way, and that's okay. The only reason they're going to speak up, though, and say, oh, remember this one? I think we should fund it. They're the one that is trying to achieve getting off the ground. Remember that one? Right? The reason they're going to remember parts of it and get excited about it is because they didn't have unanswered questions. They didn't feel like something was missing for them when they read the objectives. If they can sense, if they can see, if they can have some sort of visualization themselves of what success looks like or feels like, that means you have done a great job of writing SMART objectives. You have gotten them excited. They can see how each objective is a ladder rung. So they're taking one step at a time, and they can see how if you do these steps up the ladder, how we're going to end up here at the top of the ladder, which we're defining as success, which we're defining as impact. Then they're excited. So what might that look like in your proposal? Grant makers ask for things in really different ways, in lots of different structure. They're probably going to ask you, what's your goal? They may or may not ask you about your objectives. Some specifically use that language. Some ask you to describe your project or your proposed program. They are, in that moment, wanting you to give them SMART objectives. Don't get just into big free-flowing narrative before you first ensure that within that narrative you have said, our objectives for the project, our objectives for the program are this. Whether you number them, whether you call them out as specific points in the document, that's up to you. But when they ask you for a program or project description, if they have not elsewhere asked you about objectives, you need to include your objectives there. That's part of the story you need to build within your narrative structure. Some grant makers then, they go a level deeper. They're like, all right, I understand your SMART objectives. I'm excited about it. And before I worry about your outputs, the things you count, before I worry about your outcomes, your changes in behavior, knowledge, or skill, I want to know more about the key activities. I know that you told me about this caregiver education workshop thing. Tell me more about it. Tell me how many of them are going to happen. Tell me who's going to do them. Show me which month they're going to happen. And they want to have a bigger description about those activities that you quickly talked about in your objectives. So your goal is at the very tippy top, right? Big, broad, intangible, abstract. The SMART objective, you're giving pretty good understanding about those rungs on the ladder, what we're going to do in order to reach our overall success. If a grant maker is asking for more details about key activities, look to your objectives, think about the what's that are in there, and offer more specifics. They're giving you the opportunity to expand on the specifics from your SMART objective. So this looks like, right, we're coming down. It's like we're drilling deeper into information. They're not asking you to come up with new things. They're giving you the opportunity to give greater, deeper detail about things you started to tell them in the SMART objectives. As we think about our SMART objectives, as I mentioned, candidly, this was not the spot where when I joined the grant space, I was like, yes, SMART objectives, got it, no problem. No, this is a spot that took a lot of learning. And I'm super, super grateful for all the people along the way that helped me think about how to facilitate asking the questions differently, that have given me feedback on when I've written SMART objectives, right? Every experience makes you a little more comfortable, a little stronger as it relates to how you write a SMART objective and then think about, well, how do I build the rest of my narrative from it? I'm super happy if I get to write an application, and I don't care what length it is and how it's character counted, what the word limit is, doesn't matter. If I know what are the agreed upon 2, 3, 4 SMART objectives for this program for the upcoming year, got you covered, ready to go. Let's get into that draft document. Let's open it up, blinking cursor. This is foundational information that you can write from and about in all sorts of different structures. But remember me, hi, I'm Diane, the grant professional that is not the subject matter expert in anything that we're writing. Dangerously knowledgeable, absolutely. Subject matter expert, no. So these are some of our team's favorite appreciative inquiry type questions that we will use. If we don't know anything about a program yet, if an organization is designing a program for the first time, these questions, which I have categorized into the different SMART elements, these questions are great interview questions to use with your colleagues, to use with your collaborative partners, to use with your peers, to learn as much as is already known so that you could draft your first SMART objective. And then, hey, did I get it right? Do you have any other details? I heard you say middle school. Do you mean 5, 6, 7, 8? Or does your district mean 6, 7, 8? Depends on where you are, right? Middle school will have different meanings for different districts, different counties, different states. Let's not let folks make an assumption. So ask questions to get more detail. But if you knew at least a little bit, I heard you say middle school, so I put it in my draft objective. But I'd really like to dig deeper. Can you tell me the specific grades you're talking about? So you're giving structure that you can ask a second level of questions about to get a little deeper. So maybe it's a little smarter than it was when you first drafted. So please feel free to use any and all of these questions when you're asking your colleagues for information that will then roll up into your SMART objective. Now time flies. Well, at least it does for me when we're talking about grants. And that means we're nearly at the bottom of the hour. Indeed. Zipped right by. If you could please, let me know in the chat. Do you have any questions, things that you wanted to get answered related to SMART objectives? Frankly, anything grant related is fair game. I'm going to watch the chat. I've got my email on the screen so that you can email me your objectives to get feedback on or email me any questions. I'm going to anticipate one question, and I've been debating about what it looks like as a slide, and I haven't put it in yet. But we've talked a lot about AI in various grant webinars, and can guarantee it's going to continue to be a conversation in some here with the Native Learning Center. If you have written a SMART objective, so your knowledge, your organization's expertise, if you have written it, and you have an AI use policy in place in your tribal organization that lets you maybe get some feedback from an AI-based tool, if that's the case, then yes, I think it could be okay for you to ask if there's any suggestions on how to make an objective statement smarter. But here's my caveat. Right, first, it had to be within your organization's AI use policy. Second, there's no context for that AI tool, whichever one you choose to use, about your work and your awesomeness. And so I would only do that if you don't have a colleague in the organization or a friendly grant pro known as Diane who is willing to read your objective and offer you feedback. I think you're going to get better feedback from somebody internal to your organization who can add details, or from someone like me who is thought like a grant maker. But I think open-ended questions about what could I do to make it smarter in an AI tool, it's going to take a lot of prompt engineering to get something strong enough right now in most tools. So I know some people are thinking about it. I wanted to just bring it up. It's a question I've gotten in other trainings recently. It's okay, but I really want you to rely on those in your organization or asking someone like me for feedback. especially if you're learning about SMART objectives. So, like I said, heard that one a lot, so I thought I would throw that one out there. But you've got my email. You also have all the different ways you can reach out on social networks of your choice to ask questions if we're not already connected on LinkedIn. That seems to be like the place of choice these days for where folks are asking questions offline from classes. Totally fine. Happy to connect there, and you can ask all the questions you want in a direct message. But I don't see any questions in the chat. I want to say thanks to all of you for being so engaged in the session today. And back to you, Brianna.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time to complete this presentation. I know that we all learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time. And for everyone, just if you do have any questions that you can think of, you can go ahead and put them in the chat before Diane leaves. And I'm going to go ahead and repost this. Hold on. All right, so a link for our webinar survey for today should also be in the public chat. So we do encourage you to take a moment and just complete the survey about today's webinar. It only takes about a minute or so, and your feedback helps us to do more of what is working well and also improve on the areas that need to be improved. And we do invite you to be as candid as you like, as the survey is completely anonymous. And we hope that you can join us for our next webinar. It's going to be with the amazing Diane, and it is going to be how to use an agile framework to write and win more grants. So you don't want to miss that. We also encourage you to sign up for our email list so that you can always be aware of the exciting webinars and trainings hosted by the NLC. And also feel free to access this webinar and any other recorded webinars at our new Cathedral Webinars archive, now posted to our YouTube channel. You can also feel free to view and share them with any of your colleagues and any of your friends. And we also invite you to check out our upcoming events. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We also have an in-house produced podcast titled The Hope Thing, a Native American podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within Native American housing and self-determination. You can also listen on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as view the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we thank you so much for participating in the chat. We hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we hope to connect with you guys very, very soon. I am going to leave this webinar up for a couple more minutes just so that you all can grab the links that you need. And Diane, we will see you next webinar. All righty, you guys. Have a good day.